Greetings, Minecrafters, and welcome to another Minecraft discussion on this glorious day. My name is Kimberly Quinn. And I'm super duper excited to have a chat about what's being termed the Great Resignation, and why it is never, ever, ever a waste of time to take a break. I think, like, just to begin, I think that the coronavirus, obviously, I think we are all aware of how much it changed the world, and it's still changing the world because we're in this like long haul weirdness, place right now. And also it's changed, dramatically changed everything, as far as what it means to work in a career and a job, career, calling. It's changed just everything about it. And as far as where we do it, how much time, or the time frame that we're doing it, and really overall just what a work day means. And then one thing though that has not changed really is that human beings still need breaks. Before the Rona, we needed them, and most of us didn't take them, and we need them now more than ever. And the Great Resignation, I think, is maybe a manifestation of this also, just an overall societal burnout. Also, I'd like to do a shout out to my inspiration for today too, Lynn Zubernis, and she writes for Psychology Today as well. And I've just been really into this thing about routines and ruts and relaxation. And then I was reading, I'm like, wow, we could touch on what's going on now in a way bigger way. And there's been a lot of talk, a lot of chit chat, a lot of debate about the Great Resignation, with, at least in the U.S., record numbers of employees are just turning their backs and walking out the door from jobs. And I think really what Lynn talks about here is what's underneath what's going on underneath. And there seems to be a definite unacknowledged factor or role of widespread burnout. What's interesting too is, I like to throw a statistic in here and there, not to cause, brain pain, but just a little bit. And Lynn talks about that they've had very, very recent research has been done that found that workers find that, well, half of them feel burned out, and two-thirds believe their feelings of burnout have worsened. That's crazy. So we know, I mean, I think we've probably all experienced that at one point, and it definitely, if you've, kind of enjoyed and survived young parenthood, as much as we love our little blessings, it's 24/7, and we can take exhaustion up to a new level, especially if anybody has twins. And it takes exhaust because you have to do what you have to do, and you have to do that. And we love our little darlings. And when you've done, gone all day, and then somebody's up throwing up, at night, and then you're back at it first thing in the morning, to, and that level of fatigue, and we kind of pass fatigue, um, and we can enter into, a place of burnout. And when we do this, speaking of the employees obviously, when they're burned out, become less happy. We know, obviously, when the happiness plummets, productivity definitely plummets, and they therefore become less efficient, which is the happiness thing. Emotionally just fatigued, physically fatigued, productivity goes down. And this is also happening, at least in the U.S., in a culture that we've got here. And I love my country. This is just true, that we have historically made people feel guilty for taking care of themselves, wanting to take off from what they're doing and take a break. We've really, and actually, I have to kudos out to Champlain. I didn't even plan this, I swear. We are big, from the leadership, tops on down, really encourage, and they did before the Rona even, actually taking a break, because I think we know what it's like out in corporate America. You'll sign up for the job and they'll say, "Oh, and you get 3 weeks, and then you get a week of personal day, and take them however you want." When in reality, it's not true. I mean, you've got them, technically speaking, in HR world, but if you take them when you're burnt out, and you've got a big project going on, people, it's not good for you in the undercurrent. Like, you might not get that next promotion. So people, though they have them, don't take them. There's a definite deterrent to that out in the world. And I think that it's fair to say, and it's more complicated than this with the coronavirus, and and kids and virtual learning and families and everything going on that happened with the Rona. Although I think it's fair to say that a big part of what's going on with the Great Resignation you don't need to think too deeply. It's plain and simply societal burnout. This talk is mostly about seasoned grown-ups today, though it's also important to acknowledge if any of you have teenagers out there and younger kids. I'm thinking especially teens, I guess, because they're in between. And actually, the young adults in college. Little kids tend to naturally find an escape, I guess, maybe a little more. But the thing is, it's not. We're not talking. Our talk isn't limited to careers per se, because teens. I think anybody who has one out there, we had a little bit of this. Our youngest of five um, was just starting out in college, so uh, yeah, and some of them are taking gap years now because it was just too much. And I think of the kids who are also had the junior senior spread that like, or sorry, yeah, junior senior first year spread, like from leaving high school into college. That just couldn't have been easy. It just missing out on their proms and their sports stuff and their learning and the whole excitement of going to college, not knowing if it was going to be open or not, and talk about burnout. And so a lot of them are taking gap years now also. So, okay, so this is where we move into breaks and why it's important to take them, to shake the guilt for taking them, and actually to make a conscious, or concentrated effort to take them because a break is never, ever, ever a waste of time. I'm talking from a cognitive, psychological perspective. Okay, so I mean, so since now, I think obviously we're guessing because this is our present moment. As far as work intruding on home life for seasoned grown-ups, as well as young adult grown-ups and teenagers and even the younger kids, work has just brought in school just brought all of brought it brought excuse me brought itself right into the household, which has been made has made it tougher to set boundaries and tougher to have any kind of separation between what's considered for work, whether that's you're in ninth grade in high school or whether you're a seasoned grown up. It's really been a big blend, which I think there's a lot of talk about during the Rona virus. But now that it's we think maybe over when this long haul weird phase, it's changed things, I think, possibly for a very, very long time. So here's the thing. We're going to talk about the ways to take breaks. And the first thing, number one on the list is to work through that programming in our heads that taking a break, not being productive for a half an hour or an hour, to have guilt over that. We need to shift out of that into a positive mindset for break taking, a positive break taking mindset. And that may be a little bit of a heavy lift because we've been so conditioned from the ground up that this is just especially if everybody's still working behind you and whatever it is, and you're the only one being healthy. It can be can be a very, very tough thing to swim upstream with that, and it's just so important to be a trendsetter, especially now. Okay, so of course, number one on the list is leisure, and I do a thing with this with my Minecraft. It's talking about what leisure is and what it isn't. So leisure is doing something just for the sake of doing it. It doesn't have an end goal. It doesn't have. I mean, if that stuff happens on the sidelines, that's all right. But the goal is just to hobbies are good for this. You're just immersing yourself in your painting or your racquetball game or your walk in the woods or playing guitar in the garage. It's just, and you'll know that it's leisure when time just flies by because that means you're in the flow zone, which of course is based on the work of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. When you lose track of time, lose track of who you are, not in a codependency way, but in a like I'm one with my guitar, I'm one with my artwork, I'm one with my, walk in the woods with my golden retriever in nature, whatever like that. So leisure to do something just for the sake of it. And then of course, there's overlaps. I brought up the nature thing already. Getting out into nature, whatever that means for you, if that's Central Park or you're out in the woods in the Green Mountains or the White Mountains of Vermont or New Hampshire, great. You're on the beach in California or Florida or for my listeners in other countries, if you're out on, one of the islands in Greece or the gorgeous Alps or wherever, to get out in nature is so important because it centers us. It centers us in a way that's just very, I think, primal. It just grabs us and touches both feet back down onto the earth. And that can be enormously freeing and bring inner peace to oneself in this hectic world. There's another thing that Lynn Zabernis mentions in her article about a break is never a waste of time. I actually have heard from my students for years. It's called the Pomodoro Technique, and it's named after the a tomato, actually, and it's a little timer. So you work for a certain amount of time. I want to say it's 25 minutes, but don't quote me. You work for a certain amount of time, the timer goes off, and then you're committed. You commit yourself to stopping, even if you are right in the middle of an amazing thought or whatever. You pick your hand up off the computer or tablet or writing if you do an old school, whatever, and you stop and you actually get out of Dodge, go walk out the door, or if the weather's not like another room or something like that, you can pick up a book, you can just do a mindfulness thing. You can, you know, play a quick game of checkers with one of your kids or partner, something, but it's a full detachment of not like checking emails and things like that. It's a full detachment. My students say a lot about it actually. So this is one way to take a break for those of you that are kind of maybe also recovering perfectionists and I don't say workaholics. That's not a nice word, but very in the fast momentum of working more hours than you may like. Let's say that, so that can really help somebody with that mentality because the timer thing is concrete. Like boom, okay, I'm off, and then it rings again. It's 25 minutes later, being and whatever sound it makes, and then you go back to your work, and it's been shown that this can be highly effective for well-being and the productivity end. Okay, so here's the thing. It's Lynn talks in her article about how to take a better break, and I can't say enough about this because anyone who knows me knows how. And I'm just not a huge fan of cell phones. Of course, this would also include the computer, but really, she talks about sometimes we think we're taking a break and we're really not. And I think just when I'm out in the world, I definitely see my students, which is why when we have at the end of the year pizza party with a movie, they're required to have their cell phones off for every class, and I don't lift that when it's a movie because it sounds ridiculous, but they kind of need to be. I don't like to use the word force, but that's what it is. Strongly encouraged to take a break because if I didn't do that, they'd be like on their phones watching during the Grinch, and then you didn't even enjoy it. It just doesn't make sense. So she talks. Oh, this is new people. So I have to give a shout out to Elal and Chelsea Robertson, who are the second part of this discussion from the Psychology Today magazine. And they say, until recently, when I needed a break, I'd grab my phone. Whether I was bored, mentally fatigued, or just wanting a pick me up, I found relief by checking the news, Facebook, or Instagram. However, research suggests I could have done better. While some breaks can leave us refreshed and re energized, others, parentheses like mine, and parentheses, are more likely to make us feel depleted and drained. This is so true. And though I'm not much of a phone person, I can admit to having this experience here and there. And it's just true. Like you check and the message, and then you're right. And whatever you have to do next is right there. And there was no break. And it's like this, it's seductive, I think, because it's this illusion of rest that we're really not getting. And just as they say, really what happens is when we get pulled into that, the result is that we feel drained and depleted and not refreshed in any way, shape, or form to go back to whatever task it is we were doing. So this non-break of the cell phone also can lead to, a plummet in productivity. It's like a cycle. Then we get sucked back into the phone. We come back to work unrefreshed and depleted, and we just do it all over again. So there's also these two authors, neuroscientist Adam Gazzaley and psychologist Larry Rosen. They wrote the book called The Distracted Mind, Ancient Brains in a High-Tech World. And they talk about this cycle of unproductivity back to the phone and all that. And also how when we take a break, a healthy break, a proper break, a right sort of break, that it can actually increase productivity by directly sort of giving the prefrontal cortex arrest. So, just a quick reminder that the prefrontal cortex is the part right behind the forehead, and it's responsible for all our higher forms of thinking, reasoning, decision making, judgment, planning, organization, also impulse control, actually, even just planning for taco night, something like that. It doesn't have to be planning to be a doctor when you grow up or planning for your retirement. It can be as simple as taco night. But the point is, the part behind the forehead is all the stuff that gets us through the whole day, in a higher, our higher functioning thinking processes. So these authors explain that when we work, the prefrontal cortex makes every effort to help us execute our goals. But for a challenging task that requires sustained attention, research shows that briefly taking our minds off the goal can renew and strengthen motivation later on. Breaking for activities that rely on brain regions other than the prefrontal cortex is the best way to renew focus throughout the workday. I would say that this also feeds beautifully in with the Pomodoro routine, the tomato shaped timer ritual we just talked about. That would gels with what the authors of The Distracted Mind are saying beautifully. So Gasly and Rosen then go on to talk about the rewards that come from the cell phone. And I can tell you that I also show a short clip of um, in my Minecraft class with Anderson Cooper, actually, and mindfulness. And he ends up they put electrodes on him and do a whole scan. And the it is amazing how the cell phone, when it's in when we're not taking a break from it, the rewards are all happening in the same rewards part of the brain that any other addiction does, and it takes over. This is what happens. And so Gasly and Rosen explain that the rapid rewards we get from skimming our news feeds alleviate boredom for a few moments, but also train our brains to seek out similarly stimulating blips of joy every time we feel a twinge of fatigue. So the next time we're bored, or our past experiences having gained reinforcement from our smartphone, will drive us to self interrupt. This is exactly what we're talking about. So it's the same reward system, that happens with anything else we're talking about, that we get pulled into and then takes on a life of its own. And then, of course, you know how I feel about life minutes. There is no bigger thief of life minutes than a cell phone. Okay, so we talked about some ways that are good ways, healthy ways that actually give the PFC or prefrontal cortex the break it needs. So the number one on the list is stop apologizing for it and stop feeling guilty for it because you're doing something good for yourself. Just like eating an orange or something. Would you apologize for that? No, right? So we need to get rid of them. We need to shift into a more positive, take a break mindset, and with and leave the guilt behind. Okay. Also, we talked about hobbies, we talked about leisure, we talked about nature, exercising. I can't say enough about. And these authors also talk about laughing. Can't laugh enough. And another thing they have in here is exercise your eyes, which I already have them do in Minecraft with in a way that stimulates the vagus nerve. But I think they're talking about it says every 20 minutes, stare at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds. This type of break is restorative, Gasly and Rosen explain, because it requires blood flow to the brain areas that are not related to sustained attention. Excellent. So it's called the 20-20-20 eye breaks. What I have my students do is have them do like firm circles, massages over their eyelids, which stimulates the vagus nerve, and it's an immediate calm down. And also the outsides of the earlobes, rubbing pressure along the periphery of the earlobes also is an immediate calm down and pulls us out of that thoughty place. And lastly, they have daydream or doodle. And this is a good one also. I think we were talking about it earlier this week because it also, when we daydream or doodle and make shapes in the clouds, which is what I do actually fairly frequently, is it creates white space in the brain, which then also allows for more creativity. Okay, so there you have it. Taking a break is never a waste of time. Lastly, all I want to say is that to take a break is a good thing. Obviously, I also want to say that we're not saying to throw your very tenacious work ethic down the tubes. Like anything else, it's balance, right? And lastly, I'll throw another statistic at you because they say that the productivity and purpose are important also, which we know we need to have meaning in our lives and purpose. And also with Marty Seligman's PERMA, right? Positive regard or emotion, engagement, um, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. So those are all the meaning and accomplishment are part of what fills up the bucket of well-being. So we don't want to throw those away either. It's balance. And these authors talk about how, the taking a break thing is so healthy, so important, so good for productivity, creativity, increasing all of it, happiness, everything, focus. And then when it goes to the other way and there's too much free time, then that isn't good. So they say that this team's analysis of data from the American Time Use Survey, conducted in 2012 and 2013, something for 21 something thousand Americans responded, gave a detailed account of what they'd done in the previous 24 hours. More free time was associated with higher subjective well being. Good, we said that. Up to 2 hours, but started to decline if people had more than 5 hours of daily free time in their hands. So obviously, we're not talking about that vacation to Disney World, once. If this is your usual pattern most of the weeks of the whole year, having more than 5 hours of free time on your hands is too much. We're not talking about volunteering. That's still productive. You're just not getting paid. That's not the same thing. So balance is what we're talking about. All right. So there we go. Take a break. It is never a waste of time. Feel good about it. That's it. This is Kimberly Quinn signing off from Northern Vermont. Have a mindful day. Okay, so there you have it. Taking a break is never a waste of time. Lastly, all I want to say is that to take a break is a good thing. Obviously, I also want to say that we're not saying to throw your very tenacious work ethic down the tubes. Like anything else, it's balance, right? And lastly, I'll throw another statistic at you because they say that the productivity and purpose are important also, which we know we need to have meaning in our lives and purpose. And also with Marty Seligman's PERMA, right? Positive regard or emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. So those are all the meaning and accomplishment are part of what fills up the bucket of well-being. So we don't want to throw those away either. It's balance. And these authors talk about how the taking a break thing is so healthy, so important, so good for productivity, creativity, increasing all of it, happiness, everything, focus. And then when it goes to the other way and there's too much free time, then that isn't good. So they say that this team's analysis of data from the American Time Use Survey, conducted in 2012 and 2013, something for 21 something thousand Americans responded, gave a detailed account of what they'd done in the previous 24 hours. More free time was associated with higher subjective well-being. Good, we said that. Up to 2 hours, but started to decline if people had more than 5 hours of daily free time in their hands. So obviously, we're not talking about that vacation to Disney World, once. If this is your usual pattern most of the weeks of the whole year, having more than 5 hours of free time on your hands is too much. We're not talking about volunteering. That's still productive. You're just not getting paid. That's not the same thing. So balance is what we're talking about. All right. So there we go. Take a break. It is never a waste of time. Feel good about it. That's it. This is Kimberly Quinn signing off from Northern Vermont. Have a mindful day.